Greetings and welcome back to the Aural Mess podcast. My guest this week is Jeff Schultz. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, how you doing, Chad?
I'm good. I'm glad you could join me tonight. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so I am a musician. Obviously, I love music. This is why I'm glad you do this. It's great to just, listen to the podcast and, just listen to people talk about music and talk about music with people is really not much better. So I'm happy you do this. But I play in a couple bands. I play bass in a funk, disco, psychedelic type band called Daydreams, which I'm wearing the shirt. And then I play guitar in a Grateful Dead cover band called Lilac Lane, L-A-I-N, which I actually have a shirt of here as well. I came prepared to promote.
Nice. Little show and tell.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I love that logo.
Yeah. One of our drummer's girlfriends was just bored and made it, so we lucked
lucky
out.
You. Yeah, totally.
So you have to pay for that.
Oh, I know. Yeah, it's not cheap. Oh, that's great.
No.
So bass in a disco funk R&B band. What's that like? What kind of music? What kind of materials are you guys doing? Is it originals or?
So it is about half original, half covers. We kind of cover a broad spectrum. We play some of the classics. We play September. We play Dove's Cry. The Prince tune. We play Get Down on It, stuff like that. We'll also play new stuff like Redbone and songs in more of that vein. There's Tied Up Right Now by the Parcels is one we play. That I think that's a super cool tune. That's a workout. I like doing that one. Actually, I've only been playing bass since about I did a couple gigs, which I'm sure we'll get into later because it involves Steely Dan, which I'm sure we're gonna.
Oh yeah, we'll go there.
A good chunk about, but I actually didn't start full time really playing and owning an instrument until about January of 2022.
Oh wow!
So I've been a guitar player my whole life. I went to college for jazz guitar, which I guess may not be the best idea to go to college for, but a ton of fun. I learned a lot, and it's a fantastic instrument. But from that, my buddy was like, "Hey, you want to play bass in this band?" And I wasn't really doing much of the time, so I was like, I have a bass lying around. I might as well go and try out. And then I prepared, and they were like, "Wow, you're like the first person who actually prepared." And I'm like, "Well, yeah." I mean, you sent me the songs to learn, and I learned them, which apparently isn't something a lot of people did.
Wow, that's surprising. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think sometimes it's like people think, especially being a bass player, sometimes people think, there aren't a ton of those. I can just get the gig.
Right.
But thankfully I came prepared, and then I was actually kicked out of that band because, I don't know, they said I wasn't a good fit, which I guess is kind of true. We were kind of off in somewhat different directions moving on, but then I joined this funk disco band. I was actually in both at the same time for a few months, and that's really rewarding and fun because, I mean, playing bass, like playing funk disco bass, you can't really beat it as a bass player. It's pretty much the peak.
It is the peak, and I'm a little jealous because you see the bass behind me, and I play a little bit of bass. The cover band that I used to be in years ago, I would trade off with a bass player for like 3 or 4 songs, and at the time I kind of played bass like a guitar player, but it was covers, so it was just I'd learn the part and add little flourishes here and there. But for my own enjoyment, the last few years when I've been just banging on the guitar and the bass, like I tend to look for funkier bass lines and try to challenge myself to learn things to play. I tried to learn some of the bass line for Josie by Steely Dan. That was a miserable failure.
It's tough. I used to play that in the other band I was in. It's a monster. I mean, we would do that at Home at Last, and Kid Charlemagne was actually the first gig I played whenever I had no knowledge of bass. I'm like, I can play the roots. and so yeah.
Sometimes that's it. As long as you can just stay in the pocket and play the root notes, you're golden, at least for songs you don't know,
Yeah, those tunes are beasts. I mean,
yeah.
Tough.
Do you guys do any average white band? That was the other thing that I was obsessed with for a while, was like pick up the pieces and cut the cake and what's the other song they do? Schoolboy Crush. Like easy bass lines when you hear them, but then when you try to play them, there's so much going on that you don't realize. And it's like, what the hell?
I would like to. We're starting to pick back up learning more covers again, and I think a lot of the guys, obviously, we're all younger. You know, I'm 27. I'm the second youngest one of the band, so we're all, I think the oldest one is like 30, 32, within that age. So it's like, we're trying to play more modern stuff, which despite being 27, I kind of have sheltered myself outside of that. Oddly enough, they're like, let's do this, and I'm like, I don't know any of that. But so I think they're trying to skew younger, because we have fans come up and you should play Late Night Talking by Harry Styles, and I'm like, okay, which I listened to it and I was learning it as a song itself. It's not really my thing, but playing bass on it is a ton of fun because it's funky and it's super open. They're long chord spaces, so you can just do whatever you want.
Right.
So it's what I'm super excited for. But unfortunately, no average white band. I would like to play some more stuff. One I would like to do is Shadow Dancing by Andy Gibb. I love that tune. That's one of my all-time favorites. But I think they're trying to be like, hey, let's do some stuff that's been on the radio in the past 40 years. And I'm trying to be like, let's do something else.
Yeah, it's tough to find stuff that you want to play and that you enjoy playing, but also sort of resonates with the audience. My band went through that. I mean, we're talking, this was the mid-90s. I'm a lot older than you. But I was basically in a band that was doing a lot of alternative and classic rock and, that kind of stuff, but sort of heavier. So like Alice in Chains and, Stone Temple Pilots and Marvelous 3 when they were popular, and I'm trying to think of some of the classic rock stuff we did. It escapes me right now, but point is, like, that goes so far. I mean, it was great to rehearse and play together in my drummer's basement, which is where we would rehearse every week, but then it's hard to get gigs with that stuff because people want to dance, right? And you really can't dance to Stone Temple Pilots. I mean, you can, but people don't.
Kind of shuffle, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Do the whole beer in the hand in the corner kind of shuffle. But so we were pretty much like, okay, it's time to reinvent ourselves. It's time to think up, new songs to learn to play that people want to hear. So we decided to keep it classic. We picked up some current stuff, but we did mostly started going back to like disco and funk and 80s, that kind of thing. And at the time, we didn't have a full-time keyboard player, so I was playing very badly, single note stuff on my right hand on an oversized Casio, just to fill in some of the parts that we didn't have. But then this whole new world opened up because we were like, okay, we're missing horns, we're missing keys, we're missing a lot of percussion. And we're not about to go, double the size of the band, and we can't really do that anyway. So I had the genius idea of going out and buying a synthesizer.
Oh, okay,
so, at the time, it was probably a little dated then, but I got a really good deal on it. I think I bought it used off of some dude, and it was a Korg X2. So it was fully programmable with MIDI, and it used floppy disks, if you can imagine that. So I used to go grab MIDI tracks off the internet, spend hours tweaking them and, changing up some of the arrangements and some of the sequencing and stuff, but mainly just picking out patches to play to make it sound like the record. And then we'd get a backing track. Basically, I take out all the parts that we had in the band, obviously, and we just leave in like, horns and a click track and keys and stuff like that. So my drummer, luckily, was really solid. He had like this meter that you wouldn't believe, like set your watch by him kind of guy, like that kind of drummer. And he would play to the click, and it worked, So like here we are now. We could do like Casey and the Sunshine Band, and we did play that funky music, and we did I Will Survive like Gloria Gaynor, like we had a female singer. So we did all this fun stuff, and it was just like for the most part for me, I would just go push the button.
Yeah.
And then run back up to the mic and sing backup vocals, and I didn't have to do anything. It was great,
Like, I get paid to do this? Just
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It was fun.
No, that's a ton of fun. Yeah. Our band is definitely unique as a funk band because we are 2 guitars, bass, drums, and singers. So we definitely are missing that. Our lead guitar player is definitely one of those kind of pedal obsessed guys, which I think every guitar player goes through that phase.
Yes.
I've gone through that phase. I've kind of, as a player, I've started to be like, you know what, I just kind of want distortion and then maybe some phase and delay for once in a while. But for the most part, I've kind of stripped back because I'm like, I don't really need, obviously, wah. Every guitar player needs wah. But, like, so I've stripped back, but he's definitely one of those pedal guys. You know, he has, like, the synth pedal, which we actually kind of get in debates about because, like, it's so loud, it drowns me out. So he's like, yeah, maybe I need to get something else because it's tough when it's like, you can't hear the bass player, you can't hear half the band because the synth pedal's so loud, but he's, like, looking for a new one, which is good. But he's a total gear guy, which is really great because that gives us these options that I don't think would have existed 20 years ago, so we can still be a two-guitar band and play this kind of music while, you know, still having some sounds relatively in that kind of wheelhouse.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what about the other band that you play guitar in? Tell me a bit about that one.
So it's a Grateful Dead cover band. One of the drummer, because the Dead band has two drummers, of course, but obviously the Disco band only has one. So I have, like, one of the drummers, it's the one drummer. But he has buddies that he grew up with, and they all like the Dead, and I grew up on the Dead. You know, the one of, like, the two seminal bands in my life, the other one being Phish, growing up, in kind of a, I wouldn't say jam band household, because my mom and my brother don't like it, but my dad likes it. He's not like a hippie who's traveling around the world to go see him. He'll go when it's around, and we go together. But you know, that was like a really seminal band. That's how I like learned to read. Was my parents be like, "Where's Mexicali Blues on a tape?" And I go find it, and it's like learning to read by reading these Grateful Dead songs. I've always been cool. Obsessed. So it was cool being in a funk band with a guy who knows another drummer and a keyboard player who also really liked the Dead. So it's just kind of like, you just want to come over and jam, and then we got another guitar player, got a bass player, and that's about it. And it's a ton of fun. It can be daunting, you know, because you're playing in such a big shadow. I'm the Jerry guy, so you're playing in that shadow that's so enormous, you know, it covers everybody who's ever tried to play it, you know. I could say me and John Mayer have something in common because we're both just trying to climb that impossible mountain, you know, but it's a ton of fun, and it's really great because, you know, there's so many people that just want to come out and dance to it.
Right.
Because it's just such a cultural thing. Like, if you really like it, it's like, it's a part of you. And so it's great to just have people come out, and we're definitely the youngest Dead band by quite a few years. Ironically, the one band, I'm the second youngest. In this band, I'm the second oldest. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, we have like a 22, 23-year-old bass player and stuff, so it skews younger. So I always think we're like the most energetic in the area because we have a lot more power. Like, there's a ton of them. Actually, ironically, in college, I had to take classical guitar lessons, and that guy was a Deadhead who has his own Dead cover band too.
Huh.
So, which is so weird that, like, you go to college and you have to learn classical guitar. It's like, oh yeah, I love the Dead. I play the music all the time. And then he starts a band, and now I'm in a band. So we're kind of competing in some weird way, but it's a lot of fun. It's rewarding, and the music is obviously special, and there's always magic in that music in some ways. Not to get too hippie, you know, or whatever, but it's definitely a very like magical type of music. And whenever you get into that groove, like especially improvisation, it's like once you got 6 guys locked in on it, there's really pretty much nothing better. And coming from that jazz background as well, being like a guy, you know, playing with saxophone players and stuff, whenever like you really get into that with them, you're trading and stuff, it's like there's really nothing else quite like it.
Yeah. Oh, I hear that. The first band that I was in, we didn't do any Dead, but we would just sometimes just, you know, rehearse songs that we wanted to play out or whatever. But other times we would just play a song, and we would just go into this extended middle section and just go off on a tangent for like 20 minutes. Just to kind of stretch out and get out of the rut. And it was fun. I think that was my favorite part of that band. So I'm not a huge Grateful Dead fan. I do know some of their songs. Phish is something that is a band that I need to get into because so many people that I know love them, and so many people that I know, and I just had this conversation with a couple other guests actually on the podcast, but like I'm finding that so many Steely Dan heads are really into Phish and the Dead. To me, yes, it makes sense on some level, right? Because just it's that same era, it's that same sort of, complex music, and it takes you places where maybe other bands don't. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, Steely Dan is nowhere near a jam band. So like, how are they even in the same universe? I mean, not to say that you can't like different things, because I listen to pretty much anything, but it's just funny that those specific bands, I think, kind of cross over a lot with people. So where's your Steely Dan world come into all this?
So Steely Dan is a band that, like I said, I was in. I was just, I guess the first one I remember, other than hearing like Reelin In the Years and Do It Again on the radio for years and stuff, but the first one that really caught me was Kid Charlemagne. But like I said, I was playing bass for and it was the drummer, one of my drummer friends, the guy who was playing this trio thing. It was his bass that his buddy left for when he went to California. The action was about like this high, and like I tried to learn how to play Kid Charlemagne, and I'm just like killing myself. And then I played bass, so I have these huge strings and like dig in on this super tough tune. So it took me a little bit to finally be like, okay, I'm gonna actually go on my way to listen to him, because I had to learn like 3 hours of music. So it was like, I'm just listening to these 3 hours of music to get prepared for the show or two. But then it was that was in 2020. They were like parties. Maybe they shouldn't have been played, but it was like, well, you need to work and whatever. And we were so far away from everything else that it was kind of like, no spreading or anything. But then it was about November, December. I was finally like, okay, I'm just gonna listen to this. And I believe the first album was The Royal Scam that I listened to.
And it was starting just like, point.
Yeah, it was like blew me away, especially being like a guitar player. That's like, to me, that's the guitar album for that.
It is.
Like, and it's Larry Carlton is just all over the place, and he's just unbelievable, and it blew me away. And then a day or two after, 2 days later, because I think I just only listened to that album for like 2 days, and then I put on Asia, and that's when it was done. Like, I was already like, these are one of my favorite bands of all time. I've only heard 2 albums, but it's just like, that album, which is now my favorite album of all time, and I don't know if it can ever be topped. It's just, I think that's the perfect album from front to back, just in every possible way. I mean, there are some other contenders, a couple of them being from Steely Dan's catalog as well, but like it's almost indescribable how like perfect it is. Everything, like just being able to hear every instrument so perfectly. I'm not like a huge audiophile, but there is that aspect of like, I can listen to Rick Mariotto lift his hi-hat a quarter of an inch, and like just it adds so much to a groove that like you can't hear from anything else. And just getting into them, and it feels like I never stop getting into them. Every once in a while I won't listen to them for a month or so, but then you'll just find one song that and you like, but like you're like, oh, whoa, this blew my mind all over again.
Yeah, totally. That happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
With Steely Dan.
One that really blew me away was Night by Night.
Yes.
That song has to be one of the most underrated tunes in the whole discography.
Agreed.
That was, whenever I saw him, I knew it, but I didn't really know it. I got to see him a couple years ago in Syracuse, which was a killer show, obviously. But getting to see John Harrington, one of my favorite players of all time.
He's just amazing.
He's unbelievable. But they opened that show with Night by Night, and I was like, what is this? Like, I've heard it. I own the record. But, like, just hearing him play it, and I think that was, like, my most listened to song for, like, the rest of the year. That, and just throughout the whole catalog, even things like Kings, which is a song I never hear any discourse about, I think that's such a great tune.
Yeah.
It's just like you can go back, not back and forth, but go over and over and over. Just so many songs. The one song that I think by them that I definitely want to talk about is, well, I guess I'll ask you a question first, which is, what do you think like the most seminal Steely Dan song is? Like, if you had to pick one,
wow,
what would you go with? I know it's a tough question.
If I had to pick one,
yeah.
I gotta go Deacon Blues. I feel like it encapsulates everything about the band. It's got the lyrics are just unreal. The music, the jazz sensibility in that tune, the saxophone, like it's just the perfect package, right? It sort of talks to everything that they were trying to do, I think, as a band, in my opinion.
Yeah, and like that is definitely the common answer because it's might be the right answer. That is such
the right answer.
Yeah, the one I have to say it's Babylon Sisters.
Yeah,
me,
okay.
Everything, it almost feels like every single thing from every aspect of the like 6 albums and 8 years they were a band was building up to like that one song. It just feels like a microcosm. It's the best sounding song ever, so it has that production aspect. Because I don't think you can ever hear a single song sound better than the 274 mixes. And then
that was just a fade out.
Yeah, and then Donald Fagen heard the bass note. And he's like, "Actually, we need to go back and change this." Flew back to California. Yeah, just 55 for the fade out. I could just start a rumor and just say there were like 6 takes only on the trumpet in the second verse, and you would just believe me, like, because it's just that perfect. And from a jazz sensibility, it just in just the songwriting, it just feels like every song they wrote kind of built to that one.
Yeah,
I know, like, definitely Deacon Blues is the classic, like, this is like almost autobiographical, but I think from a songwriting standpoint, I feel like nothing kind of builds like Babylon Sisters, personally.
Yeah. No, I agree. I can totally see that. And any song that starts out with just, a couple of drum beats from Bernard Purdie, like, you can't go wrong. Like, it just gets better from there.
I mean, what a master. I mean, getting him on those albums is so critical. Because, I mean, he just makes you want to dance as a drummer. And that you can't do anything better than that. I mean, other than maybe Keith Carlock, but he's kind of like... Maybe not an evolution, but I believe we had a discourse on Twitter where we were talking about John Harrington and Keith Carlock are kind of like the...
Yes, we did.
Like, the very much like the kind of ending, kind of final boss, if you will, of all, like, Steely Dan musicians. Where it just, everything they do is, like, exactly what that band needs.
Yeah. Yeah. They are both unparalleled players, and you have to respect them even more because if you listen to them out of context, like John Harrington's solo stuff and things he's done with other musicians, that's not Steely Dan is just phenomenal. He's one of my favorite players of all time too.
Yeah,
same thing with Keith Carlock. That guy is just superhuman. Like that's the word I use to describe him. He's a beast, right? But when you think about the fact that they definitely bring their own flavor to the band and the Steely Dan catalog, but they both remain pretty faithful to some of the original parts that were laid down on the records, right? Because they just do. And, John Harrington has to be like 8 different guitar players every night. And not only from a stylistic standpoint, but if you really pay attention, and here's where that pedal obsession comes in, he sounds like Larry Carlton, right? He sounds like Elliot Randall. He sounds like Jay Graydon. Like, his tone is 99% what it was on the records, and that's not accidental, right? That's totally on purpose.
Yeah.
But he throws enough of himself into it that it's just not like he's just playing the same shit, right? And the same thing with Keith Carlock is there are certain fills and certain, I think, beats and patterns that he stays faithful to, but he throws in so much of his own flavor and his meter and his just timing and his feel. I mean, he's like... Wow. I could just talk about those guys all night.
I know, I could too. There's definitely like something to like Steely Dan musicians that no other musician really has. Like, to get to that point, Freddie Washington, the bass player.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Top
he
notch.
can just lay down a groove like I've never heard before. Just like, and the thing that really gets me is just how complex the music is.
Yeah.
Like today I was just messing around with Gaucho, the tune on guitar, and I found there's 11 chord changes in the first 2 lines. 11 chord changes in 2 lines. I don't know how you groove on that. I don't know how you're able to first off make it sound good, and then make like an 11-piece band sound good with it. It's not like 2 or 3 people. There's a full band there, and it's just mind blowing. I mean, I definitely think the Steely Dan band is at its best right now. Like, if you've never seen them, that's like a band. If you're a fan, it's like a must see. I think each musician they've gotten, because I think most of them have been there now for at least 10 years. I think they've
this current version
found the guys.
Right.
Yeah. And, I listen to a good chunk of live shows, obviously being a Phish and Deadhead. I do like live music a lot. So I listen to it. I don't really find myself listening to anything before Harrington joined. I feel like they had a lot of shred guys. And, like, the good players, but I don't want to listen to somebody Sweet Pick or the Deacon Blues. It sounds bad, Like,
who is it? Wayne Krantz, I think that he was, right? Is that what you're talking about?
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I know there was a guy from UFO. That might be him. One of the guys from UFO, I think. And I know one of them went on, I think he was on Sunken Condos. The guy who played on Jack of Speed, which that's like one of the main ones I listen to from that period because it's the different version, which is actually one of my favorite Dan tunes as well. It's one of the ones that really got me into them, was especially the version from 2000. That kind of brings me to a controversial Steely Dan point I have, which is that as an album, I feel like what is it? Two Against Nature is probably like the worst sounding Steely Dan album.
I agree.
I think, like, from a songwriting standpoint, excellent as always. But I think the mix is just not there. But going back and listening to those live tracks from 2000, 2003, when they were touring that album, it's top notch. And those are definitely songs, like, to go out of your way to listen to.
That's an interesting point, and I just made that point. So I am, I'm not a reunion album hater by any stretch, but Two Against Nature is my least favorite in their catalog, right? I've said it, I'll say it again. I just had a little argument with somebody on Instagram today about it, because we were talking about a couple songs, and I'm like, I don't really like that album. And they're like, you don't what? Like people, I think he was ready to jump through Instagram and punch me. But it's funny because that album, there's something about it I don't like. The songwriting is great, the playing is great, and I think you might have nailed it, where I think it's just the mix and I think it's the recording. It's very of its time. It's very slick, and not to say that Asia and Gaucho weren't slick, but they're slick in a different way. It just sounds too manufactured to me, and it ruins the listening experience. And again, the songs are great, and what I've realized is the last 3-4 years I've been, like you said, I've been listening to a lot of the live shows on YouTube and watching a lot of that stuff, and those songs are 1,000 times better live to me than they are on the album. Everything Must Go, different story. I like the album. It's not one of my top 5 out of the catalog, but it's definitely not my worst. It's probably my second least favorite, I guess. Yeah, I'm saying it out loud again. Yeah. But those, I think they got a little bit more back to how they used to sound, if that makes any sense. With that album, and not as overproduced. I felt like Two Against Nature was just overproduced, and it killed it for me. But hearing those songs live in a different context, it lets them breathe, and it just gave them a whole new life for me. So I've been slowly getting back into those tracks again.
Yeah, and I also think, like, one thing I think of is I think the band on that outlet, the band, there's probably 1 million players on it, but the people who played on it, I feel like they just didn't give enough power in the original. They just kind of, like, one thing I think of is Jack of Speed, and like they're doing it and the guy's playing like limb shots. I'm like, you need to hit the snare, man. You need to give that umph, and
right,
something like that where it's definitely like a good album, and I'm happy it won the Grammy and stuff, and they definitely deserved it after all they've done. I know that's the big controversy is that should have been Radiohead or Eminem. It should have been Steely Dan, because probably should have given it to him because he didn't win for Asia. But but it just doesn't have that power. I definitely agree. Everything Must Go, I think, is a better album. I don't think the songs are better than they are on Two Against Nature. I think personally my least favorite might be Pretzel Logic.
Huh, okay.
It's just it's a good album. I feel like there's too much filler. I feel like the songs that are good are some of the best in the catalog. Ricky Don't Lose That Number, Night by Night, Pretzel Logic. Those three specifically, I think, are some of the best tunes they've ever had. But I do think something like Bailey Town, like With the Gun or Charlie Freak, I'm kind of like... I mean, I guess With the Gun is pretty good. Charlie Freak, I don't really care for. Bailey Town is okay, but... it just, for me, I listen to it, and it just doesn't have enough of that Steely Dan flair for me. Like, we're kind of in between. It almost is like, I know Katie Lied is often looked at as a transitional album, but I almost feel like Pretzel Logic was them transitioning out of a band.
Yeah.
And then Katie Lied is them figuring it out. So it almost feels like there's a 2-album kind of transition period.
Yeah.
And I definitely think Katie Lied is a better album than Pretzel Logic, personally. I think that's
I agree.
a great album. But, the first two are great. Countdown to Ecstasy is definitely the best of that band, of band Steely Dan, I think. I mean, My Old School and Bodhisattva alone, I think, clear pretty much anything from those 3 albums. But it's kind of, I feel like Pretzel Logic just doesn't have that kind of flair like they would already had and would have had. Although the live recordings from that time from '74 are unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, I love going through and listening to Michael McDonald in the band. Obviously, he's gonna make everything better. He tends to make everything around him better.
Yeah, bet he does.
Yeah.
Are you going to look at his or read his autobiography or his memoir when it comes out at the end of the month?
I didn't know he had one coming out, but I think I might
does.
now.
Yeah,
Thank
he
you
does.
For letting me know.
It's coming out, I think, on the 21st. So I'm going to pick up I'm hoping they do a digital version right away. If not, maybe I'll just order the hardback. But I'm really excited because apparently there's a lot of stories about his time with Steely Dan. So I think that'll be really fascinating to read.
Yeah. What they should do is an audiobook with him talking it. If they could do that, I think it'd be the best seller.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, definitely great stuff that he helped to contribute, because he added a lot to that band. Also, of course, later on the Dewey Brothers and his solo work. Just a fantastic musician. Also, writing the only Van Halen tune I really like. I found out that he...
I'll Wait.
I'll Wait. I didn't know that. I'm like, there's something about this song that, like, I like a lot more. Like, I like Van Halen to some extent. The good, Unchained is a classic tune and stuff. Yeah. But, like, that song always just did it for me so much more. And I'm like, why is that? And I find out Michael McDonald helped it. I'm like, well, that's the missing piece. He should have just helped write all this stuff.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, I guess there was the whole Ted Templeman connection. I think that's how that whole thing happened. But
okay.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the Yacht Rock web show series?
No.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to link it in the show
Please
notes,
do.
but I'll shoot it to you on Twitter when we're done. But it's I think a 10-part series that was done a while back, and it's just like ludicrously funny. It's just like basically an unofficial history of how the whole Yacht Rock thing started, and there's a guy that plays Michael McDonald. Steely Dan shows up, and the Eagles and Kenny Loggins, and it's freaking hilarious. I mean,
I'll
really
have to check
is.
it out. That sounds like a great time.
Oh, I've seen it probably 20 or 30 times. I mean, they're like, 10, 15 minutes a piece, I think. So it's just an hour and a half commitment to watch the whole thing. Yeah. So it's like watching a movie, but it's so funny. And I'm not going to tell you anymore because you just have to see it for yourself. But I mean, I agree. I think side 2 of Pretzel Logic is probably their weakest side. I like With a Gun. Parker's band's growing on me the more I listen to it as I get older. I'm still on the fence. Through With Buzz gets a lot of hate, but it's okay. You know, I mean, it's one of two songs that they had strings on, which, you know, is reason enough for it to exist, I guess.
I mean, the thing is, it's not like a bad Steely Dan song does not necessarily make it a bad song. You know, like bad is like grading on a curve in a weird way because they're all going to be good. You know, saying
you got to throw something out.
Yeah, saying like Baileytown's a bad song. Well, it's still better than probably 70% of songs I've heard. You know, so it's the catalog is that strong that the song that may shine through in a different bands, it just looks weak compared to something like In Asia or something. You know, or even other songs on that album. It's just how I kind of think about it. I was actually curious, how did you get into Steely Dan? Obviously, big Steely Dan posters. So I mean.
Yeah, let me tell you the short version. So, first exposure was when I was a kid. You know, we're talking like the mid 70s. I was probably 7, 8 years old. And my sister, who worked in radio, used to get all these promo 45s and albums and things. And, you know, they would have duplicate copies for the radio station. So they were allowed to take stuff home, or, you know, maybe they weren't allowed to, but they all did. So, you know, she used to give me all the stuff that they had doubles of, or, you know, whatever, she and her husband. So I remember that she had given me a 45 of Josie. And, you know, being that young and being exposed to that music, it was like, I didn't know what the hell was going on. You know, I just knew it had a great groove, and, you know, I love the guitars and the drums, and just sang along with it, not even knowing what half the lyrics meant, you know, but my sister was also, you know, into Steely Dan a little bit. And, you know, I guess going into my tweens and early teen years, I got exposed to like all the radio hits that you would imagine, right? Like My Old School and Reelin' In the Years. And I remember when Gaucho came out, I was 8. That's how old I am. Hey 19 was on the radio, and it was, you know, it was a pretty big hit. So, you know, I'd be sitting there with my little boom box with the tape, you know, waiting for like songs that I like to come on the radio so I could record them, right? And I love that song because it was, you know, just such a great song. So I remember it being on tapes that I had made off the radio years ago. So, and that sort of spun into young adulthood. And then, you know, Steely Dan sort of changes, I think, as your view and your sort of life experience piles on, right? So I got more into some of the deeper stuff. So, you know, Deacon Blues and the whole Asia album, you know, like you said, kind of blew my mind the first time I listened to it all the way through, and like got all the songs under my belt. And then for the longest time, I was really into Katie Lied. Dr. Wu for years was my favorite Steely Dan song.
It's so good.
Yeah, and people tend to hate on that album, and I don't know why, because to me it's some of their strongest songwriting and some of the best. You know, they had the production problem, and it doesn't sound maybe as crystal clear, but, you know, to your point, it still sounds better than 80% of the shit that was on the radio from other bands at that time, right? So,
I think that's one of the best. I knew a guy who swore up and down that was the best album, and I can hear it. Like, I totally get it. There's like so many great tracks on it. I don't think there's a bad one. Even like a song like Throw Back the Little Ones, which I found people really don't like that song, and I think it's one of the best on the album. It's got such a heavy groove to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then, you know, I guess just they've always stuck with me. I've always been listening to them on some level. But the last 3-4 years, really, I guess when the pandemic kind of started, I just was spending a lot more time online and on Twitter, and started doing all these music challenges. I think that's how you and I sort of started to connect, you know, or maybe through some of the other music Twitter stuff. And I just started to post more things about Steely Dan as I was discovering more things about Steely Dan, and I got really immersed in the lore and started reading all the books and, you know, interacting with like Good Dan Takes and all the big accounts that have been like sort of the shepherds of Steely Dan on the internet, right? And digging into the Reddit subreddits for Steely Dan. So I just kind of immersed myself, I guess, and I'm still doing it. So, you know, I've got my stupid meme page on Instagram. And I cross post a lot of those to Twitter. You know, so you've obviously seen them there, but it's fun, you know, and it's great. And it this is not a Steely Dan podcast, my standard disclaimer, but so many people that I've connected with through music in general tend to gravitate towards Steely Dan because I think we're all in that same kind of bubble, which is kind of funny. So, the conversations here always end up turning to it. And it's great. I love the fact that, the next generation, like your generation and even my daughter's generation, she just turned 18, they're all discovering Steely Dan and really getting obsessed with them. So I feel like it's carrying the torch, which makes me happy.
It's timeless. The music is truly timeless. They have such they're one of those bands. I think, like you were saying, Grateful Dead and Phish and Steely Dan all kind of have crossover. I think it's because the bands that really just sound like themselves and nobody else is one thing. Everybody always says Phish is like the Dead. If you listen to both bands, Phish sounds absolutely nothing like the Grateful Dead. They jam and they play different stuff every night. That's about the crossover.
Right.
I mean, they're a very progressive band, they're very jazz focused, and a rock band. The Dead more of that kind of country, classic, psychedelic, of course, but very much like classical songwriting. Songs about westerns and gunfights and saloons and all that cool stuff. But Steely Dan itself, also a band like the Dead and Phish to some extent, that's just very American. They're so nihilistic. That viewpoint can only come from growing up, being there in like '68 and all that stuff. That kind of viewpoint can only do that. It's like Roger Ebert said something about film noir, where he said it's so American because only America could have that kind of viewpoint on the world, where you find a woman and she's trying to kill you, and everything is black and white and smoky, and you're always drunk. And Steely Dan embodies a lot of that. Is one thing I find, is that they're just so much themselves, and they're just so uniquely American in their own kind of weird offshoot way, reading beat poetry and all these kind of weird things that I don't know how many other places were really doing, listening to jazz and all this stuff. So I think that's one thing that draws these three bands together, is that they're all uniquely their own thing.
Yeah.
Musically, Steely Dan doesn't sound like anybody. Even like Walter Becker's solo stuff doesn't really sound like Steely Dan. Fagen's does somewhat, and I think that's kind of why I prefer Fagen's solo work over Walter's. Personally, I obviously get the appeal of Walter's. It's great music, but he does kind of keep a little bit more. But even Donald's doesn't sound a ton like Steely Dan. And I think that's one thing, is you like Steely Dan because there's nowhere else you can get. You can't get that sound from anybody else. I think that's one weird thing that draws a lot of people to it, because if you like it, well, that's it. Like if you like grunge, I'm not saying Nirvana is exactly like Soundgarden or whatever, but they all have that kind of similar-ish sound. Stone Temple Pilots, stuff like that. It's all in that same vein.
Yeah, sure.
I've read that, people saying, I first heard Reelin In the Years come on the radio in 1972, and nothing sounded like it.
Right.
And that's like the classic rock staple. And so then what they would end up becoming is so much even more themselves. But even back then, people were like, it was like the Carpenters would come on the radio, and then that would come on. And you'd be like, what is this? This is different from anything I've ever heard. No shade to the Carpenters, they're a good band. But, I mean, they're not Steely Dan.
No, they're not. But, yeah, I mean, it's funny because, they're so sarcastic and so dark, and if you really listen to the lyrics, I mean, they're just really, not happy, right? And it's funny that they would play "Reelin In the Years" on AM radio in between the Carpenters and the Bee Gees or something, and it's just like people are dancing to "Reelin In the Years," and it's like that's a really cynical, nasty song, when you get down to it. So it's just so funny.
I think it's Donny Marie Osmond that covered it on the show, one. And you're just like, this has to be the most bizarre choice that could have ever happened. Like, only on American TV in 1972 could that have ever happened.
Yes.
There's no other time period or universe where that could have happened.
No, I agree, and I don't know if it was like drug fueled, maybe not because it was the Osmonds, but who knows, you know? But I mean,
the producers might have been.
Yeah, probably, you know.
Yeah.
I could totally see that, but
yeah,
and it's funny because not many people have tried to cover Steely Dan, and I mean a lot of them have. I mean, there's lots of cover songs out there, but I guess nobody really stays 100% faithful to the song, in my opinion, because you don't want to do a note for note cover, right? And because it's almost impossible. So I think so many of the cover songs are amazing because they're slight or you know, full reinterpretations of a song, but they hold up because the songs are so damn well written, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, you hear Bad Sneakers, right? I mean, that's one of my favorite Steely Dan songs, and one of my favorite tracks off Katie Lied. One of my previous guests, Jane Sheldon, hi Jane, if you're watching, does this amazing, like, sort of slower piano bass with strings cover.
Oh, really?
And it's and you know, if you look at the episode that she was in, I think she was, I forget which one it was, maybe episode 5. It's linked in the show notes there, and it's just gorgeous, you know. And you could probably play that song almost any way you want, and it's going to be great, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just such a well constructed song.
Yeah. But also jazz tunes too, which are of course meant to be played by a ton of people. So like, you know, you can improvise a little, maybe not very well if you're working at it, but you know, like these tunes are inherently, they were somewhat writing songbook tunes.
Yeah.
In their own kind of way. You know, like they said they thought getting into music was writing like Tin Pan Alley. You just show up in New York and we'll just sit down and play a piano and write some music.
And they did, and they tried that, and it kind of worked, right? I mean, ultimately they got lucky that they wandered into the Brill Building one day, and can't think of his name. The guy from Jay and the Americans just happened to be there, and he was like, "Sure, play me a song."
I know.
It's like serendipity.
Yeah, but it's almost like you could just maybe not for like Gaucho. Some of those like insanely difficult songs that I don't even know how somebody writes that. But for tunes like some of those earlier things, even all the way up to Katie Lied, you can see like a songbook type thing. Like you could see this just being printed at some point. Like, oh, we don't really have radio yet, but here's the tune. You can play it and you can sing it at a party. Maybe the lyrics might have to be less nihilistic, but to sell in like 1940. But you know, like there is some aspect of that traditional songwriter in them that I think is another reason you can gravitate towards them.
Yeah, definitely.
They're one of a kind, and I think that's why we all like them so much. You know, I can show my buddies, like, I talk about them so much that, like, people in my bands, and they'll be like, I checked them out, and I had no idea they were that good. Like, but, like, the singer for the Daydreams, he was, like, we all posted our favorite albums, and I put Asia as mine. He was like, I listened to it, I was like, what do you think? He's like, I thought it was going to be dad rock. It was, like, unbelievable. He's like, I can't even comprehend it. It was like, I had no idea what I was listening to. It just blew me away. And they're just so unique in that aspect that, like, really, a lot of people, you can't just put on a singular album. There are a lot of, like, 10 out of 10 albums out there, you know. And I've been trying to find those for a long time, especially being a prog guy, too. I'm a huge progressive rock guy, so that's, like, the album format is that. But even diving into, like, that stuff, it's very hard to find, like, a completed work like a Steely Dan album.
Yeah.
But
what are some of the progressive rock bands you're into? And I guess, you know, besides the three that we've talked about, you know, Phish, the Dead, and the Dan, like, what are some of your other influences or some other favorite artists? So,
my top 5 favorite bands are Phish, Steely Dan, the Grateful Dead, and then there's an Italian progressive rock band called Goblin that I love. I'm a huge horror movie guy, and so at the Seminal, I was like 18, and as I was finding myself becoming a horror movie fan, I found out about, and also just becoming a classic film guy, which I still am to this day, finding like, oh, there's this guy from Italy that makes horror movies, and he has this progressive band called Goblin, like the soundtracks, and they're like a total mood band. Like the super unique. That's one of the best shows I've ever seen. Was me and my dad drove up to Toronto. I think it was like a Thursday. I think it was kind of like, why did you buy me a ticket for this? Like, we had to drive 3 hours to Toronto and then 3 hours back on the same night. And I was like, it'll be so worth it. And it was. But they're definitely a band that means a lot to me. And they're just, like, so unique. I find myself liking a lot of unique bands. Genesis is another huge one for me. Whenever I was, like, I was a big Rush guy. I still am. They're a great band.
I love Rush.
Yeah. Oh, unbelievable. That's probably the first. Like, Phish is definitely a prog band, but I think they were the first, like, traditional progressive band that I got into. You know, my dad had 2012. He has all, like, the records, all those old records. He said that was actually the band that got him into music. He said one day he heard Xanadu. He's like, oh, like, I get it. I understand music now. I understand why people like it. That's my favorite tune by them too. But finding them, and I had a guitar teacher who was like a big King Crimson guy, and he was like, check out King Crimson. And I listened to the first album, In the Court of the Crimson King. That's another album that blew me away. And then he's like, okay, now check out Genesis. And that was like, to this day, they're still my favorite, like the classic bands. Those first few albums they have, outside of the first one where they tried to be a pop band, that wasn't. Later on, they would become a very good pop band, probably one of the best pop bands of the 80s. But like Trespass, Nursery Climb, Foxtrot. I mean, I actually have them in my room, like on vinyl. I bought them all. And, you know, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway especially was my favorite album until I heard Asia, actually. That was my favorite studio album for a long time. So I'm a big fan of them. I've gotten into Oasis in the past few months, which I know I find like my 5 favorite bands very unique, and then Oasis, a band famously ripped off a lot of people. But I don't know what it is about them. I mean, I like 90s music okay. I mean, Phish is a weird band because in the 80s, they started in the 80s, got big in the 90s, but never really sounded like any 90s bands. Oasis and Weezer are the two kind of like classic 90s bands I've really gravitated towards. Those are, in the past year or so, those have been probably my biggest finds musically. I mean, it's not weird. I mean, they're both great bands. Getting to see Weezer last year was awesome. I don't know if you're a fan of them or not.
Yeah, well, I love Weezer, yeah, but I've never seen them.
Yeah, they came like 40 minutes away. I was like, I paid $40 for a ticket. Yeah, sure, that sounds like a good night, and might as well. And I had an awesome time, you know. They definitely have a deep discography that I think a lot of people overlook.
Yeah.
They're a band that has a lot of good and a lot of bad. Is one thing about them, you know. Some of the best albums, Blue, Pinkerton, and White, are pretty unbelievable albums. And you have like Black and Pacific Daydream, and I'm sitting there like, these are dreadful. Like, why am I even listening to these? But they're a great band. Oasis, those are like kind of the two that I've gravitated towards a lot. I mean, also playing like in a disco band, I listen to a lot of disco. I'm always looking for like new songs. That's one thing I always find. Like, I'm always trying to find a new movie. I'm not usually watching stuff. I'm always trying to find a new thrill musically. You know, I guess you can't buy a thrill, but you're always looking for that new thing, and then you find that one specific song, you get like obsessed with it. I know I can listen to like one song like 30, 40 times in a row.
Oh, me too.
Like break it down, and there's a song that feels like it's probably been forgotten, but I sent in that playlist I sent you. It's called Saturday Night Sunday Morning by Delma Houston.
Oh, yeah.
And that song like blew me away. It also hit me at a perfect time when you're going through some stuff with a girl. So, you know, like,
I hear that.
You know, like sometimes whenever that happens, there's just nothing sounds better than like a specific song that kind of hits in that perfect way. But we all know it. But that song is really just, I've fallen in love with. It's such a sophisticated thing. I find myself liking stuff with a lot of chords.
Yeah, me too.
I shockingly, Steely Dan fan, Phish fan, likes people with lots of chords and complex stuff. So I mean, that's kind of stuff I've been listening to, and I checked out some of the stuff that you were listening to. And
That was
then,
so random what I sent you.
yeah, but I was wondering how you found some of these. Like, there's that song, "Lincoln, Nebraska" by Humbird. I listened to that, and I was like, that hit me. I was like, this is like hitting me so hard.
Really?
It's like, it was beautiful too, and I was like blown away. Like, what are they, like a new band, or are they like?
I think so. Yeah, I think they're relatively new. I haven't really looked into them except for that song, but I do love that song. So I am the same, like you said. You're always chasing a thrill with music, and I'm doing the same. Like I'll have the same 5 or 6 or 7 artists that I love and will listen to all the time on purpose. Like go push play on their albums, but I'm always trying to find something new and different to listen to, and the whole world of the internet has just made that so easy, and it's fantastic. So the playlist that I sent you, and I usually link it in the show notes because it's always changing. It's called Stuff I Want to Listen to, and basically what I do is when I find something or somebody recommends a song or I hear something that I haven't heard in years and I'm like, oh man, I forgot about that song, I'll just jump into Spotify and throw it on that playlist. And then, when I get 30, 40, 50 songs on it, over time, I'll just sort of move the ones that I really like over to like a permanent playlist. So that one's sort of ephemeral. But right now there's, so last night on Twitter, I was just like, okay, I have to drive into, I live in New Jersey. I work in Manhattan.
I saw that. I was going to send something, but I was at band
you should have.
So
you should have.
Like, I saw it like as I was starting band practice. I'm like, I can't send something. I have to...
So I'll put out a call on Twitter sometimes or Instagram and be like, hey everybody, I've got a hour and a half commute each way tomorrow and I need some new stuff to listen to. Give me a song you're obsessed with. And a lot of people are really cool and they'll shoot me a song, 2 songs, 3 songs. And, sometimes I've heard them before, sometimes I haven't. So the ones that I'm not familiar with, I'll throw them on the playlist. There's also a newsletter. It's the name of it's escaping me right now. Maybe I'll link that in the show notes too. Okay. But it's like a new music discovery newsletter, and this guy just combs the internet for like new artists and songs that are like blowing up in different music critic circles and stuff like that. And he'll put out like I think it's a weekly newsletter, maybe it's monthly. Anyway, and I feel like that Lincoln, Nebraska song, I think it was from that newsletter, if I remember correctly. So I'm, and that's just one of the ways I discover music is just, asking people and doing lots of reading, And what's fun too sometimes is like, if you have Spotify and you have the setting turned on where it'll just like serve you up songs after you're finished listening to whatever. Like if you listen to an album or a playlist, once you reach the end, Spotify will just give you stuff that it thinks that you will like based on what you've just been listening to. And their algorithm's pretty awful sometimes, but once in a blue moon, like I'll be in the car and playlist comes to an end and it starts shuffling up just random stuff that I'd never heard before. So I found a lot of stuff that way, believe it or not, because it gets it right about 30% of the time, but when it gets it right, it usually nails it.
Yeah, hey, that's 30%'s a good average. It's 3 out of 10 songs. So I mean, that's skip buttons right there. It's not like if you don't vibe with something, okay, let's wait. Oh, I like that. Yeah, so
I do lots of skipping, but yeah. Yeah, and I've become a little bit obsessive with, the Spotify Wrapped at the end of the year is fun, but they always send you a playlist. It's like, your top songs for the year.
Yeah.
So what I've done is every year now, I just did it for 2023 finally. It took me a while to get there, but I'll add in all the songs that were on the current year's playlist, and I have a running playlist back to 2017 when I first subscribed to Spotify Premium. So I've got basically my top songs of all time of me being on Spotify. And there's this thing called Smarter Playlists. It's like a website service. So you hook it into Spotify and you can give it all these parameters. So like you can pull in stuff from a playlist and mix it with another playlist and dedupe stuff and everything else. So I built this filter that basically pulls in alternate songs from each of my top songs playlists from each year. And then it deduplicates them, although it doesn't do a great job. So I have to go through and manually do it, and it spits them out into a new playlist. So like I have this like my favorite songs from the last 6 years or 7 years right now. So that's been fun because it's fun to press shuffle on that and just go through, it's like 400 or 500 songs, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. You make me want to get Spotify. I use YouTube Music
Mm-hmm.
because, well, I already pay for YouTube Premium, so it's like it's the same
It's
thing.
there.
So it's
Yeah.
like, I'm a working musician. I don't make a lot of money, so I need to I'll use like one, and but that sounds awesome. Like the app is. It's one time of the year I get jealous online. I'm like, oh, everybody's getting to see what they're listening to, and I can usually kind of guess, but it's nice having that list. That's one thing. My buddy, he'll always send me his, and usually at the top of it, it's like some songs I'll show him. It's like for a few years it was Steely Dan because I was really into it. He's like, oh, that's awesome, and yeah, the band Ghost. I remember I showed him them, and he's like, oh, I love these guys, and so it's always cool also to see like your buddies and they're like, oh wow, I got to show you that band. Now you like them so much, you listen to them. That's one almost rewarding that you were able to show them something that they enjoy so much that they listen to a lot.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's one of the most fun things about, being able to have stuff online like Spotify and YouTube is like, it's so easy to share music with people now. So,
yeah.
And by the way, it was a whole different thing back in the day when you had to like make a mixtape or burn somebody a CD. Yeah. It was more of a labor of love. But even still, I find myself not only sending people links to playlists, but like making playlists for people, and be like, okay, if you like this, let me give you 10 other songs that you should be listening to, or whatever.
Yeah, I love it.
And I love getting this back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's so great being like, check this out. And then like, oh, check this out. And then you kind of get into a sharing war almost. Like, you're just kind of like, oh, this is cool. This is cool. And then it's just the best way to find music is through your friends. Because obviously your friends are probably going to like some stuff that you like, I'm guessing.
It's funny because when I was in the band, back when I was in my 20s, our bass player was like 8-9 years older than the rest of us. But and so he had a whole different taste in music. He was into the same stuff that we were playing, and some of the stuff was new to him, but a lot of the current stuff he was into anyway. But he went way off in his own world of music. He's the one that got me into Rush. He turned me on to artists like Pat Travers and Humble Pie, and I can't even think of all the bands that he was responsible for getting me into. But we would do, I would pick him up because he was on the way to band practice from my house. So I would pick him up and drive him to band practice and drop him off afterwards. And we had like probably 20 minutes in the car together. So that was our time to like play each other stuff. So I'd play him stuff that he wasn't familiar with, like new bands, and then on the way home or whatever, it was his turn, so he'd bring a cassette or two and pop it into his or a CD, maybe at the time, I forget what we had, but so he'd play me stuff on the way home, and it was always like Frank Zappa and like deeper. He was really into progressive stuff. Like Rush was his favorite band. I think he saw Rush live like 35 times or something by that point in his life, so he was like a little bit obsessed. But it was fun, and that was how I discovered a lot of bands. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially people from an older generation are definitely always great. So like, oh no, like you gotta check this out, and like no, like this is what I used to listen to, because I always like to hear like what people are listening to. It's just so much fun. Because you get to listen to it and have a discussion. Even if you don't really care for it, you can still talk about it and be like, oh, this is why I liked it, this is why I didn't like it. As long as they're open to having a discussion. Maybe a slightly negative discussion, but it's just such a great way to not just, get to know more music, but just to get to know somebody. I find is just a great way. My friend will get in the car and she'll be like, can I play music? I'll be like, yeah, obviously. Like, I don't think I've ever said no to it. I'm like, well, what are you listening to these days? It's just fun.
Yeah, definitely. So, Jeff, thank you so much for being on. I would like to wrap it up, but I have one parting question that I've been asking all my guests, and I think it's a pretty good one. So I'm curious to see what your answer is. So we've talked about a lot of bands, a lot of artists that we like. What's the most unlikely song that you're obsessed with? So given your love for all the bands that you mentioned, now that I know that, like, throw me a curveball. If you had to tell me one song that you've been listening to on repeat that just doesn't fit your normal mold, what would that be?
That's hard. That's not an easy question, you know. Um, I I tend to kind of stick to some of the same stuff in some ways, but you know, I do have to throw it to my guys. Being a 2000s kid, I am a Nickelback fan, so I think I should throw it to like what is it? Rockstar is a song that I have in my playlist. People are always rolling their eyes. I'm like, I was like 8 or 10 when it came out. I still love it. I know all the words. That's definitely a tune that people are like, why are you listening to that? I'm like, because I like it.
and that's kind of the point of the question is like, you know, I'm a firm believer that there's no such thing as a guilty pleasure. And, you know, I hate music shaming. Like, if you like something, play it loud. Who cares? You know, like if you're into it, you're into it. And that's beautiful. Yeah. So great. Well, again, thanks for coming on. You know, like I said, I'll link a bunch of stuff in the show notes, and you know, you can find both of us on Twitter. So happy to continue the discourse there with anybody who's watching or listening. And thanks for joining. And we'll talk to you soon.
Peace out.
All right.